They laughed when she walked into Ridgewood Precision Club with her grandfather's weathered hunting rifle and worn canvas jacket. "The championship qualifier isn't a costume party," the registration attendant said, his voice carrying across the lobby. Olivia Bennett said nothing. She simply presented her competition card, stepped onto the range, and fired 12 consecutive bullseyes that silenced every snicker in the room. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Ridgewood Precision Club stood like a fortress of prestige on the outskirts of Denver, its modern glass and concrete architecture reflecting the Rocky Mountain skyline like a mirror. The facility had been featured in Sports Illustrated as America's premier marksmanship destination, where Olympic medalists trained and national champions were crowned. Its titanium and mahogany entrance displayed trophies inside museum-quality cases, each one commemorating shooters who had made history on these very lanes. Inside, the air smelled of cedar, gun oil, and exclusivity. The membership fee alone could buy a decent car, and the waiting list stretched 2 years long unless your last name appeared on the building's donor wall. Each shooting lane featured custom-built targeting systems with digital tracking accurate to the millimeter. The floors were polished concrete, and the walls displayed signed photographs of celebrities and politicians who had visited this temple to precision. On this particular Saturday, the Autumn Invitational Qualifier was underway. The club buzzed, with competitors in tailored shooting jackets adorned with sponsor patches, their custom-fitted weapons gleaming under the specialized lighting. Camera crews from shooting sports networks set up in the corners, preparing to broadcast the day's events to enthusiasts nationwide. And then Olivia Bennett walked in. At 32, Olivia moved with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her face bare of makeup save for a touch of lip balm. Her eyes, the color of autumn leaves, carried a depth that spoke of both hardship and resilience. She wore faded jeans, sturdy boots, and a canvas field jacket that had seen better days. Over her shoulder hung a rifle case made of cracked leather, the stitching reinforced in places with fishing line. The registration desk was staffed by Bradley Wilson, a former collegiate shooting champion whose competitive career had peaked early. Now he managed the club with a meticulous attention to detail and a barely disguised disdain for anyone he deemed unworthy of Ridgewood's standards. "Excuse me," he called as Olivia approached, his voice pitched to carry. "The visitor. Entrance is around the east side. Competitors only through these doors." Several nearby shooters turned, their expressions shifting from curiosity to amusement as they took in Olivia's appearance. A man in a pristine shooting jacket leaned toward his companion and whispered something that made them both snicker. Olivia didn't react. She simply stepped up to the desk and placed her competition card beside Bradley's keyboard. "I'm registered for lane 14, she said, her voice soft but clear. "Olivia Bennett." Bradley's eyebrows rose as he glanced between the card and his computer screen. With obvious reluctance, he confirmed her registration, his lips pressing into a thin line. "This is a qualifying event for the regional championship," he said, loud enough for the growing audience. "Not a beginner's workshop." "I'm aware," Olivia replied, taking back her card. "Thank you." As she walked toward the preparation area, the whispers followed her like shadows. "Who let the park ranger in? Maybe she's here to clean the lanes. That rifle case looks like it survived the Dust Bowl." The preparation area was a large open space with benches and tables where competitors could ready their equipment. Most had arrived with teams, coaches, assistants, sometimes family, members wearing matching branded gear. Each table displayed an arsenal of specialized tools, cleaning kits, and high-tech equipment. Olivia found an empty spot at the end of a bench and placed her leather case down carefully. As she unzipped it, a woman at the next table made a show of moving her expensive gear away, as if Olivia's well-worn case might somehow contaminate her precision instruments. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice announced over the speaker system, "the Autumn Invitational Qualifier will begin in 30 minutes. Please prepare your stations and proceed to your assigned lanes when prompted." From her case, Olivia withdrew a Remington 700 rifle. Unlike the polished, customized weapons around her, this one showed its age in the worn wooden stock and the slight patina on its metal parts. But to the trained eye, it was immaculately maintained, the barrel spotless, the action smooth, every functional part in perfect working order. Rebecca Thornton, the reigning women's precision champion for 3 consecutive years, was stationed at the next table. Her sponsorship jacket gleamed with the logos of ammunition manufacturers and optics companies. Her custom rifle, rumored to cost upward of $15,000, rested on a specialized stand while her assistant checked the scope alignment. "Is that an actual hunting rifle?" Rebecca asked, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention. "I haven't seen one of those at a competition since, well, ever." Laughter rippled through the preparation area. Even Rebecca's assistant smirked as he handed her a specialized cleaning rod. "My grandfather's," Olivia answered simply, continuing her preparations without looking up. "Well, that's, quaint," Rebecca said. "But you do realize this is a precision competition, not a nostalgic exhibition. There's a reason we use competition-grade equipment." More competitors drifted over, drawn by the opportunity to witness Rebecca Thornton in action, both on and off the range. "Maybe she doesn't know better," suggested Matthew Grant, last year's overall champion. His custom-built rifle gleamed under the lights, its carbon fiber stock and titanium components representing the cutting edge of shooting technology. "Someone should tell her this isn't deer season in the backwoods." The group's laughter grew louder. A few pulled out phones, capturing Olivia's outdated equipment for social media posts that would no doubt mock the outsider who dared enter their exclusive world. "Lane assignments are now displayed on the main board," the announcer called. "Please proceed to your designated positions." The competitors moved toward the shooting range, many still casting amused glances back at Olivia. Rebecca made a point of walking past her, pausing just long enough to add, "Try not to embarrass yourself too much, honey. Not everyone is cut out for this level of competition." The shooting range itself was Ridgewood's crown jewel. 50 lanes stretched out under perfect lighting, each one equipped with electronic targeting systems that tracked and displayed shots with millimeter precision. The spectator area behind the shooters featured comfortable seating and large monitors, showing close-ups of the targets and real-time scores. Olivia moved to lane 14, sandwiched between a national team member and a rising college star. Both gave her sideways glances as she set up her station with methodical calm. Unlike her neighbors, who arranged complex shooting rests and specialized supports, Olivia simply unfolded a basic shooting mat and placed her rifle case beside it. The club's head instructor, Coach Vernon Hayes, a former military marksmanship trainer with Olympic credentials, walked the line inspecting each shooter's setup. When he reached Olivia, he stopped short, his expression fluctuating between surprise and disapproval. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right event?" he asked, making no effort to lower his voice. "This is the centerfire rifle qualifier, not the beginner's safety course." "Yes, sir," Olivia replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Lane 14, as assigned." Coach Hayes frowned at her rifle. "That's a hunting weapon, standard factory stock, no custom trigger work that I can see." He glanced at her simple shooting mat. No specialized rest system either. By now, several spectators had noticed the exchange and were watching with interest. The cameraman from the Shooting Sports Network had even turned in their direction, capturing what promised to be an amusing sidebar to the day's competition. "I'm comfortable with my equipment," Olivia said. Hayes shook his head. "It's your entry fee to waste," he muttered, moving on to the next lane where he greeted the shooter with noticeably more warmth. As the competitors finished setting up, the club's director, Maxwell Richardson, took the microphone. With his silver hair and custom-tailored shooting jacket adorned with international competition patches, he embodied Ridgewood's prestige. "Welcome to the Autumn Invitational Qualifier," he announced. "Today's top 12 scorers will advance to the regional championship next month. We're honored to host such distinguished marksmen and women." His eyes scanned the line of shooters, hesitating momentarily on Olivia before continuing. "The format today is simple. 12 shots at 300 yards. Electronic scoring will track your results in real time. Perfect score is 120 points. Shooters, prepare for your first relay." The spectator section had filled considerably. Ridgewood members, family of competitors, and shooting enthusiasts occupied the plush seats, many watching the monitors with expert interest. A small group had gathered specifically behind lane 14, drawn by the novelty of the outsider with the outdated equipment. $10 says she doesn't break 70, one whispered loudly enough to be heard. "I'll take that. I say she doesn't break 60, another replied, triggering chuckles. Among the spectators sat a quiet man in his early 40s, his posture straight, his eyes watchful. Unlike the others, he observed Olivia with calculation rather than amusement. Thomas Mitchell, former Special Forces, and now a talent scout for one of the largest shooting equipment manufacturers in the country, had learned long ago not to judge competitors by their appearance. The electronic system chimed, signaling shooters to begin. The range fell into the concentrated silence particular to precision shooting events, broken only by the controlled breathing of the competitors and the occasional soft report of a rifle. Rebecca Thornton, 4 lanes down from Olivia, fired her first shot. The monitor displayed a 9-7, excellent by any standard. A smattering of appreciative applause followed. Matthew Grant similarly scored a 9-8 on his first attempt, cementing his reputation for consistency. When Olivia's turn came, the whispers behind her grew. She ignored them, settling into position with a fluid grace that caught Thomas Mitchell's attention immediately. Her breathing slowed, became rhythmic. Her body aligned with the rifle, not as if she were holding a tool, but as if they were a single entity. She squeezed the trigger. The monitor flashed 10-0, perfect center. A surprised murmur rippled through. The spectators, Bradley Wilson, watching from the side, frowned and checked the electronic system as if suspecting a malfunction. Olivia proceeded to her second shot without reaction. Again, her breathing settled into the same rhythm. Again, she squeezed the trigger with the same controlled precision. The monitor flashed 10-0. The murmurs grew louder. Rebecca Thornton glanced over, her expression shifting from dismissive to puzzled. Coach Hayes stepped closer to lane 14, watching with narrowed eyes. By her 5th perfect shot, the entire range had taken notice. The cameraman had repositioned to capture both Olivia and her target monitor. Matthew Grant's rhythm was visibly disrupted as he kept glancing toward lane 14 instead of focusing on his own target. "This is unexpected," the announcer said, quietly into his microphone. Lane 14 has fired 5 consecutive perfect shots using what appears to be standard hunting equipment. The crowd behind Olivia had grown. The wagering had stopped. The laughter had died. In its place was a tense anticipation that hung in the air like smoke. Shot 6, 10-0. Shot 7, 10-0. Shot 8, 10-0. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Rebecca Thornton lowered her rifle, her concentration broken. She whispered something to her assistant, who shook his head in disbelief. Shot 9, 10, 0. Maxwell Richardson himself had moved to stand behind lane 14, his expression a mixture of disbelief and growing respect. Shot 10, 10, 0. Shot 11, 10, 0. The range had fallen completely silent now. Every eye was fixed either on Olivia or the monitor displaying her impeccable score. Even competitors who should have been focusing on their own performance had paused. To witness what was unfolding, Olivia took a deep breath for her final shot. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed her face. Not nervousness, but something like peaceful resolution. She squeezed the trigger one last time. Shot 12, 10, 0. The perfect score, 120 out of 120, flashed on the board. The system chimed a special notification tone that had rarely been heard at Ridgewood. Perfect score achieved. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then Thomas Mitchell began to applaud, slowly and deliberately. One by one, others joined, until the applause thundered through the range. Several competitors simply stared, their own rifles temporarily forgotten in their hands. Olivia stood and calmly began to pack her rifle, her movements as methodical as when she had unpacked it. Only the slight tremble in her fingers betrayed any emotion. Coach Hayes approached, his earlier condescension replaced with undisguised astonishment. "Miss Bennett, I've been coaching for 30 years, and I've never seen a perfect run with standard equipment. Never." Olivia nodded her acknowledgement, but continued packing. Rebecca Thornton had abandoned her lane entirely and approached Olivia with a mixture of competitiveness and genuine curiosity. "Where did you train? Who's your coach?" Olivia secured her rifle in its case before answering. "My grandfather taught me to shoot when I was 8. He said talent isn't in the equipment, it's in the relationship between the shooter, the rifle, and the target." "Your grandfather?" Matthew Grant had joined them now, his custom rifle hanging forgotten in his hand. Who was he? Maxwell. Richardson stepped forward before Olivia could answer. "William Bennett," he said quietly, recognition finally dawning in his eyes. "It was William Bennett, wasn't it?" A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. William Bennett was a legend in shooting circles, a record-setting Olympic marksman in the 1970s who had disappeared from the competitive world at the height of his career. Olivia nodded once. "Yes, but he never..." Richardson began, then stopped himself. "The records show he had no children." "He didn't," Olivia replied. "He adopted me when my parents died, raised me on his ranch in Montana, away from all this." She gestured at the elaborate facility. "He didn't believe in competitions anymore, said they'd lost the spirit of true marksmanship." Understanding dawned on Richardson's face. "That's why your registration came through our legacy exemption program. Bennett was one of Ridgewood's founding members before my time. His name is on our charter." Bradley Wilson pushed through the growing crowd. "That's not possible. We would have known if William Bennett had an heir." "Grandpa valued his privacy," Olivia said simply, "and he taught me that true skill speaks for itself." Thomas Mitchell approached, his manner respectful where others had been dismissive. "Ms. Bennett, I'd be honored to speak with you when you're ready. What you've demonstrated today isn't just remarkable, it's historic." The crowd had grown into a semicircle around Olivia, their expressions transformed from mockery to fascination. The cameraman was recording everything, ensuring that what had begun as a potential human interest sidebar would now be the lead story. "Why come now?" Rebecca asked, her competitive nature unable to accept the situation fully. "If you've had this skill all along, why show up for the first time today?" Olivia zipped her case closed and straightened. She asked the empty room, You always said competitions had lost their way, but maybe that's exactly why I should go." The whir of an approaching vehicle interrupted her thoughts. Through the window, she spotted a sleek black SUV navigating the rutted dirt road to her ranch house, a vehicle distinctly out of place in rural Montana. When the SUV stopped, Thomas Mitchell emerged, looking as out of place in his business casual attire as his vehicle did against the rustic backdrop. He carried a leather portfolio and wore an expression of determination. "Miss Bennett," he called as he approached the porch, "I hope you don't mind the unannounced visit. I've been trying to reach you for months." Olivia leaned against the porch, railing. "No cell reception out here most days," she said, though they both knew that wasn't the whole truth. "What brings White Hawk Equipment's top talent scout all the way to the middle of nowhere?" Mitchell smiled. "You've done your research on me. Grandpa taught me to know who I'm dealing with." "Fair enough." Mitchell gestured to the porch. "Steps." "May I?" Olivia nodded and he sat down, placing his portfolio beside him. "I'll be direct, Miss Bennett. What you did at Ridgewood changed the conversation in our industry. For decades, we've been selling the idea that better equipment means better performance. You challenged that narrative with a single perfect round." Olivia remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "I've seen the invitation to nationals," Mitchell said, noticing her surprise. "The Federation doesn't typically issue many direct qualifications." "How did you know about that?" "I serve on the selection committee." Mitchell leaned forward. "Ms. Bennett, I believe you have the potential to revolutionize competitive shooting, not just with your skill, but with your approach, your grandfather's approach. Whitehawk. Equipment wants to sponsor you, but not in the traditional sense." He opened his portfolio and handed her a proposal. "We want to create a heritage line of precision rifles. Simple, elegant, focused on fundamentals rather than gadgetry. With your input and endorsement." Olivia scanned the document, her eyebrows rising at the figure on the last page. "This is substantial." "Excellence should be properly valued," Mitchell replied, "but I suspect the money isn't what will convince you." "You suspect correctly." Mitchell nodded toward the letter on the kitchen table, visible through the window. "The national championship is where this conversation becomes real. If you can demonstrate that your Ridgewood performance wasn't a fluke, if you can compete at the highest level with traditional equipment against the most advanced technology in the world, you'll change shooting sports forever." Olivia considered his words, running her finger along the worn porch railing her grandfather had built with his own hands. "And if I can't? If the technology proves superior after all?" "Then we learned something valuable too," Mitchell said. "But having watched you shoot, I'm betting on you and your grandfather's philosophy." After Mitchell departed, Olivia walked to the old barn where her grandfather had set up his workshop. The space remained exactly as he had left it, reloading, equipment precisely arranged, tools hanging in their designated spots, decades of shooting journals stacked chronologically on the shelves. The air still held the comforting scent of gun oil and leather. She ran her hand along the workbench where William Bennett had taught her to clean her first rifle, to reload her first cartridge, to respect the tools of marksmanship. Her fingers found the notches carved into the bench's edge, one for each lesson completed, a physical record of her journey from novice to expert under his guidance. The last notch had been carved just weeks before his passing. "Remember, Liv," he had told her that day, his hands steady despite his illness. "When you know your rifle like your own heartbeat, when you can feel the wind without equipment, when you understand that shooting isn't about dominating a target, but becoming part of its existence, that's when you've learned everything I can teach you." Olivia picked up her grandfather's rifle from its storage case and examined it with practiced eyes. She checked the action, inspected the barrel, tested the trigger pull. Then she reached for his reloading equipment and began preparing rounds for the national championship with the same meticulous care he had instilled in her. "One last lesson, Grandpa," she whispered to the quiet barn. "One last chance to share what you taught me." 3 weeks later, Cypress Ridge National Shooting Center hummed with activity. Situated on a sprawling property outside San Diego, the complex represented the pinnacle of shooting sports facilities. Multiple ranges catered to different disciplines, with the centerfire rifle competition area serving as the crown jewel. A climate-controlled indoor range with electronic targeting systems so advanced they could track projectiles in flight and display wind patterns in real time. For the first time, emotion filled her voice. "My grandfather passed away last month. His last wish was that I come here and show the world that precision isn't bought. It's earned through patience, discipline, and respect for the craft." She looked around at the high-tech equipment, the sponsorship patches, the cameras. "He wanted me to remind everyone what this sport is supposed to be about." Coach Hayes stepped forward. "Ms. Bennett, on behalf of Ridgewood Precision Club, I offer my sincere apologies for the reception you received today. Your grandfather was a legend, and clearly his legacy lives on in you." Maxwell Richardson nodded in agreement. "The perfect score you achieved today is unprecedented in our qualifying events. I'd like to offer you honorary lifetime membership to Ridgewood, effective immediately." Olivia shook her head. "Thank you, but I didn't come for membership. I came to fulfill a promise." "Then at least allow us to display your grandfather's rifle in our trophy case," Richardson persisted. "A perfect score with standard equipment deserves recognition." "This rifle isn't for display," Olivia said firmly, patting the case. "It's for shooting." The crowd's admiration was palpable now. Several competitors who had earlier mocked her approached to offer congratulations. Bradley Wilson hung back, his expression struggling between embarrassment and awe. Thomas Mitchell handed Olivia his card. "When you're ready to talk about your future in this sport, please call me. What you've demonstrated today changes everything. We thought we knew about equipment advantages." As Olivia prepared to leave, Rebecca Thornton stopped her with an unexpected request. "Would you consider—" She hesitated, her pride visibly wrestling with her words. "Would you show me your technique sometime? I've never seen anyone shoot like that." Olivia studied the champion who had dismissed her so easily hours before. After a moment, she nodded. "Grandpa always said true marksmanship should be shared, not hoarded. I'd be happy to." The media surrounded her as she made her way toward the exit, cameras flashing, reporters calling questions. Olivia answered a few with polite brevity, deflecting personal inquiries and focusing on her grandfather's philosophy of marksmanship. As she reached the door, Matthew Grant hurried to catch up with her. "Ms. Bennett," he called, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine respect. "I've been sponsored by the top equipment manufacturers for years. I've always believed that technology gives the edge, but today—" He shook his head in wonder. "Today you've made me question everything I thought I knew about this sport." Olivia smiled, a real smile that reached her autumn-colored eyes. "My grandfather would say, that's the most important target I hit today." She stepped outside into the Colorado sunshine, the leather rifle case slung over her shoulder, containing not just a weapon, but a legacy. Behind her, Ridgewood Precision Club buzzed with a new energy, champions rethinking their approach, newcomers feeling inspired, and a sport momentarily reminded of its true essence. Thomas Mitchell watched her go, already composing in his mind the report he would send to his company. The shooting world was about to change, and Olivia Bennett, the unassuming woman they had all dismissed, would be at the center of that change. In the parking lot, Olivia placed the rifle case carefully in the bed of her weathered pickup truck. She climbed into the driver's seat and took a moment to look back at the prestigious facility with its gleaming windows and manicured grounds. "We did it, Grandpa," she whispered, touching the faded photograph tucked into her visor. An old image of a younger William Bennett holding a small girl on his shoulders, both of them smiling beneath the Montana sky. "Just like you said we would." She started the engine and drove away from Ridgewood Precision Club, leaving behind a legacy that would echo far longer than the sound of her perfect shots. The champions who had mocked her would remember this day whenever they lifted their expensive rifles. The spectators would tell the story for years to come, and somewhere, she liked to think, her grandfather was smiling. They had laughed when she walked in with her grandfather's weathered hunting rifle and worn canvas jacket. But no one was laughing now. 6 months after her perfect performance at Ridgewood Precision Club, Olivia Bennett's name had become synonymous with marksmanship excellence. Shooting magazines featured her on their covers. Equipment manufacturers pursued her for endorsements. Social media exploded with debates about her techniques. The viral video of her perfect qualification round had amassed millions of views, inspiring a generation of young shooters to reconsider the fundamentals. But Olivia herself had vanished from the competitive circuit as quickly as she had appeared. Back on her grandfather's ranch in Montana, she continued her quiet life, tending to cattle, fixing fences, and practicing at dawn in the makeshift range William Bennett had built decades ago. The breathtaking landscape of rolling hills and distant mountains served as her only audience. The wooden targets, weathered by years of Montana seasons, her only scoreboard. Until the registered letter arrived. Olivia stood on her porch, examining the envelope with the embossed logo of the National Shooting Federation. Inside was an invitation that made her heart skip. Direct qualification to the national championship, with all expenses paid. The letter mentioned her historic perfect score and unique contribution to the sport. The championship would take place in 3 weeks at Cypress Ridge, the most prestigious shooting facility in the country. She placed the letter on her kitchen table beside a framed photo of her grandfather. "What do you think, Grandpa?" The facility's lobby resembled a luxury hotel, with marble floors, soaring ceilings, and display cases showcasing historic firearms and trophies. Banners hung from the rafters displaying the names and images of past champions. Equipment manufacturers had set up elaborate booths showcasing their latest innovations. Television crews prepared for live broadcasts of the final rounds. When Olivia entered carrying her grandfather's leather rifle case, the buzz of conversation momentarily faltered. Despite her attempts to maintain a low profile since Ridgewood, her perfect score had made her instantly recognizable in shooting circles. Competitors, officials, and spectators watched as she made her way toward the registration desk. Unlike at Ridgewood, no one mocked her worn jacket or vintage equipment now. Instead, the whispers that followed her were filled with speculation and nervous respect. Is that really her? They say she doesn't use a stabilizer or even a modern scope. She can't possibly repeat that performance here. Ridgewood must have been a fluke. At the registration desk, the attendant greeted her with a warm smile. "Ms. Bennett, we're honored to have you competing. The Federation has assigned you to the championship group based on your qualification score." Olivia nodded her thanks and accepted her credentials, turning to find Thomas Mitchell approaching. "You came," he said, his relief evident. "When you didn't respond to any of our follow-ups, I wondered if Montana had swallowed you whole." "I needed time to prepare," Olivia replied. "This isn't just any competition." Mitchell nodded toward the practice range. "The preliminary warm-up session starts in an hour. Most of the championship group is already there, including all the defending champions." As they walked toward the practice area, Mitchell briefed her on the competition format. The national championship consists of 3 rounds over 2 days. Today is the preliminary round, 15 shots at 300 yards. The top 20 advance to tomorrow's semi-final. Then the top 8 move to the final round, 20 shots at 500 yards. Scores reset after each round. The practice range was a hive of activity. Competitors adjusted sophisticated equipment, while coaches analyzed performance data on tablets. Support staff hovered nearby, ready to swap out components or recalibrate scopes. The atmosphere was more laboratory than shooting range, with conversations revolving around ballistic coefficients and atmospheric conditions. Rebecca Thornton occupied the center lane, surrounded by her team. Since Ridgewood, she had secured 3 major tournament victories and a new contract with a leading equipment manufacturer. Her rifle now sported a prototype computerized scope that automatically adjusted for environmental conditions. When she spotted Olivia, Rebecca straightened and approached with measured steps. The practice range quieted as competitors turned to watch the encounter. "Bennett," Rebecca said, extending her hand. "I wondered if you'd show." Olivia shook her hand. "Thornton, congratulations on your recent wins." Rebecca studied Olivia's rifle case. "Still using your grandfather's equipment?" "Still works. Fine for me." A flicker of competitive fire crossed Rebecca's face. "Ridgewood was impressive, I'll give you that. But this is the national championship. Different level, different pressure." "I understand what I'm walking into," Olivia replied calmly. Rebecca nodded once. "Good, because I've spent 6 months rethinking my entire approach after what you showed us. I want to beat you legitimately, Bennett. No excuses, no equipment advantages, just pure skill." Before Olivia could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. A large entourage had arrived, surrounding a tall man with silver-streaked hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to adoration. "Jackson Pierce," Mitchell murmured to Olivia. 6-time national champion, military background. Never lost a final round. Pierce moved through the practice range like royalty, nodding acknowledgements to fellow competitors while his team arranged his equipment at his assigned lane. His rifle gleamed with custom engraving, and his shooting jacket displayed more sponsor patches than a NASCAR driver's uniform. When Pierce's gaze found Olivia, he changed course to approach her directly. His entourage parted to create a path, and conversations throughout the range died down. "You must be Bennett," he said, his voice carrying just enough to ensure everyone heard. "The perfect shooter from Ridgewood." Olivia met his gaze evenly. "Mr. Pierce." Olivia settled into position, her routine unchanged from practice. She took a breath, aligned her body with the rifle, and squeezed the trigger with smooth precision. The electronic board flashed 10-0. A ripple of approval moved through the crowd. One perfect shot was impressive but expected at this level. The true test would come with consistency. Pierce fired again. 9-9. Thornton 10-0. Olivia 10-0. By the 5th round, a pattern was emerging. Pierce consistently scored 9-8 to 9. 9 excellent shooting that would normally lead the field. Thornton alternated between 9-9 and 10-0, demonstrating why she was considered a rising star. And Olivia, to the astonishment of spectators and competitors alike, maintained perfect 10-0s with each shot. The tension built with every round. Pierce's team huddled more frequently, their expressions growing concerned. Thornton's coach frantically analyzed her shooting data, searching for any adjustment that might help her close the gap. Other competitors in the championship group began glancing toward lane 14, their concentration fracturing as Olivia's score remained flawless. After 10 shots, the scoreboard told the story. Pierce, 98, 7 Thornton, 99, 3 Bennett, 100, 0. The announcer's voice carried a note of excitement rarely heard in precision shooting competitions. "Ladies and gentlemen, With 5 shots remaining, in the preliminary round, Olivia Bennett remains perfect with a score of 100. This is unprecedented in national championship history. Pierce's next shot registered 9-7, his lowest of the day. The momentary lapse revealed the pressure he was feeling. He turned to his coach, visibly frustrated, and demanded adjustments to his scope. Thornton maintained her composure better, scoring another 10-0. But the strain showed in the tight line of her shoulders. Olivia continued her methodical approach, each shot a mirror of the last. Same breathing pattern, same body alignment, same gentle squeeze of the trigger. And each resulted in the same perfect score. With 1 shot remaining, the entire facility held its breath. Pierce had recovered somewhat, bringing his total to 147. 9. Thornton stood at 148. 7. Olivia remained perfect at 140. 0. If she scored a final 10-0, she would complete the preliminary round with a perfect 150, something never achieved in national championship history. Pierce fired his final shot, a resigned 9-8, bringing his total to 157-7. He stepped back from his lane, shaking his head. Thornton took more time with her final shot, her concentration absolute. The result? 10-0 for a final score of 158-7. Excellent by any standard. Then it was Olivia's turn. The facility fell into complete silence. Even the camera operators held their breath, their equipment trained on the unassuming woman in the faded jacket, whose perfect performance challenged everything the competitive shooting world thought it knew. Olivia settled into position one last time. As she aligned her body with the rifle, memories of her grandfather's teachings flooded her mind. His patient voice explaining the fundamentals, his weathered hands demonstrating proper technique, his quiet pride when she mastered each lesson. This moment, this shot was for him. She squeezed the trigger. The electronic board flashed. 10-0. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the facility erupted in applause. The announcer's voice broke with excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, Olivia Bennett has just completed the preliminary round with a perfect score of 150. This is the first perfect preliminary round in national championship history. Cameras flashed, spectators stood, equipment manufacturers exchanged meaningful glances. Even some of the competitors joined the applause, recognizing they had witnessed something extraordinary. As Olivia packed her rifle, Rebecca Thornton approached, her expression a mixture of frustration and admiration. "That was... I don't even have words," she said. "You're changing this sport, Bennett, whether we like it or not." Jackson Pierce remained at his lane, his back to Olivia. His team gathered around him in concerned discussion. His rigid posture spoke volumes about his reaction to being outperformed so dramatically. Thomas Mitchell waited at the edge of the range, barely containing his excitement. As Olivia approached, he fell into step beside her. "You've just made history," he said. "Your reputation precedes you, as does yours." His eyes flicked to her rifle case. "Though I admit I'm skeptical about perfect scores with hunting rifles. Competition at this level usually requires specialized equipment. Different approaches work for different shooters," Olivia replied diplomatically. Pierce's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Indeed. Well, I look forward to seeing your approach in action. The preliminary round should be educational for everyone." "Nasi." Pierce returned to his team. Mitchell leaned closer to Olivia. "Don't let him get in your head. Pierce is as much a psychological competitor as a marksman." "Grandpa always said mind games reveal a shooter's insecurity," Olivia replied, moving toward an empty practice lane. As she set up her position, she became aware of a small crowd gathering behind her, including coaches, equipment representatives, and even some of the younger competitors. All watched with undisguised curiosity as she unwrapped her grandfather's rifle and proceeded through her preparation routine. Unlike the elaborate setups around her, Olivia's approach was minimalist. No electronic wind meters, no computerized scope, no stabilizing system beyond a simple shooting mat. She checked her rifle with methodical precision, then loaded a single round. The spectators murmured as she settled into position. Some scoffed quietly at what they perceived as outdated technique. Others leaned forward, intrigued by her confidence. Olivia took a breath, aligned her body with the rifle, and became still. For a moment, nothing existed beyond her, the rifle and the target. Then she squeezed the trigger. The shot broke the relative quiet. On the electronic display, her bullet registered dead center, 10. 0. The murmurs intensified. Olivia loaded another round and repeated her process with the same result. By her fifth consecutive perfect shot, the practice range had fallen silent. All eyes now fixed on lane 14 and its unassuming occupant. Jackson Pierce, who had been adjusting his equipment with his back to Olivia, slowly turned to observe. His expression remained neutral, but the tightening around his eyes betrayed his surprise. Rebecca Thornton abandoned her own practice to watch, her coach frantically taking notes beside her. After 10 perfect shots, Olivia calmly packed up her rifle. She had verified its 0, confirmed her ammunition's performance, and reacquainted herself with the range atmosphere. Nothing more was needed. As she stood, Thomas Mitchell approached, barely containing his excitement. "Do you realize what you just did?" Half the manufacturer's representatives in the country were watching that display. "You've got their full attention. Now." Olivia nodded toward Pierce, whose team was huddled in intense discussion. "I think I've got everyone's attention." The preliminary round began 2 hours later. 64 of the nation's top marksmen and women took their positions across the range, now filled with spectators and media. The electronic scoreboard displayed names and current standings in real time, with camera operators capturing close-ups. For the live broadcast, the competitors were divided into groups of 8, with the championship group, including Olivia, Pierce, and Thornton, scheduled to shoot last. This arrangement guaranteed maximum tension and viewership as the day progressed. Olivia watched the early groups from the preparation area, studying their techniques and reactions. Most followed similar patterns: elaborate equipment setup, constant adjustments, frequent consultations with coaches about changing conditions. The scores were impressive but varied, with even top competitors dropping points on occasional shots. When the championship group was called to their lanes, the atmosphere in the facility shifted palpably. These were the favorites, the record holders, the names that defined competitive shooting. And now, among them, was Olivia Bennett, the anomaly who had shaken their confidence with a perfect score using equipment they had long considered obsolete. Lane assignments placed Olivia directly beside Jackson Pierce. As they set up their stations, the contrast couldn't have been more stark. Pierce's team fussed over his carbon fiber rifle, checking his computerized scope, monitoring atmospheric conditions on tablets. Olivia simply unfolded her shooting mat and positioned her grandfather's weathered rifle. "Interesting strategy," Pierce commented, loud enough for nearby competitors to hear. "Using nostalgia as a psychological advantage? Clever." Olivia didn't respond. Her focus had already narrowed to the task ahead. The announcer's voice filled the range. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the preliminary round of the National Championship. Each competitor will fire 15 shots at 300 yards. Perfect score is 150 points. Championship group, you may begin when ready." Pierce was first to fire, his shot registering a 9, excellent by any standard, earning appreciative murmurs from the crowd. Rebecca Thornton followed with a 10-0, a perfect first shot that brought applause. When Olivia's turn came, the facility grew quieter. Spectators leaned forward, camera operators zoomed in. Equipment manufacturers watched with particular interest, many already calculating how her performance might affect their marketing strategies. And tomorrow's semi-final will draw more attention than any shooting event in decades. Everyone wants to know if traditional equipment and technique can truly compete at the highest level. Or if today was just a fluke, Olivia added, recognizing the unspoken question. The preliminary round was impressive, Mitchell acknowledged, but tomorrow's distances increase. The wind conditions are forecast to be challenging. And now every competitor knows what they're up against. They'll be mentally prepared. Olivia nodded, understanding the message. The real test was still to come. As they walked through the facility toward the exit, they passed the equipment, manufacturer displays. Representatives who had barely acknowledged Olivia that morning now tracked her progress with intense interest. Several stepped forward as if to approach her, but Mitchell's protective presence kept them at bay. "They'll all be calling by morning," he said, offering contracts, customized equipment, whatever it takes to associate their brands with what you've accomplished. "I'm not interested in becoming a billboard," Olivia replied. "I know that's what makes you so valuable." Mitchell glanced back at the range. "But after today's performance, you've become more than just a competitor. You're a statement about the future of this sport." Outside, as evening settled over Cypress Ridge, Olivia found a quiet spot overlooking the facility. She opened her phone to a saved video, the last recording of her grandfather, taken months before his passing. In it, William Bennett sat in his favorite chair, his once powerful frame diminished by illness, but his eyes still bright with wisdom. "Shooting isn't about the equipment, Liv," he said in the video. "It's about the relationship between you, the rifle, and the target. When those three elements align in perfect harmony, when you can feel that alignment in your bones, that's when magic happens. That's what I want you to show them. That's my legacy." Olivia closed the video and looked back at the facility, now illuminated against the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, higher stakes, and even more scrutiny. Jackson Pierce would adjust his approach. Rebecca Thornton would push herself to new limits. The entire shooting world would be watching to see if traditional methods could truly compete with cutting-edge technology. But tonight, under a sky filled with emerging stars, Olivia Bennett felt a quiet confidence. Her grandfather's lessons, his philosophy, his approach to marksmanship, these weren't relics of the past. They were timeless fundamentals that had shaped champions long before computers and carbon fiber. And tomorrow, she would prove it again. The morning of the semi-final round dawned with unseasonable winds whipping across Cypress Ridge. Weather alerts warned of gusts reaching 30 miles per hour, conditions that would challenge even the most sophisticated equipment and experienced shooters. For many competitors, this development necessitated frantic recalibrations and strategy adjustments. For Olivia, it simply meant listening more carefully to what her grandfather had taught her about reading wind without instruments. She arrived at the facility early, before most competitors, and found Thomas Mitchell waiting in the lobby, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering her one. "The weather report has everyone in a panic." The manufacturer's representatives were up all night, helping their sponsored shooters reconfigure their systems. "And what about you?" Olivia asked. "Aren't you worried about your potential investment?" Mitchell smiled. "I saw you shoot at Ridgewood. The wind doesn't worry me." They walked together through the facility, now transformed for day 2 of the championship. The semi-final would feature only 20 competitors, with the range reconfigured for heightened drama. Digital displays had been enhanced, additional cameras installed, and the spectator area expanded to accommodate increased interest. "Ticket sales doubled overnight," Mitchell commented. "After your perfect preliminary, everyone wants to see what happens next. There's even talk of additional broadcast coverage." As they approached the preparation area, they found it buzzing with activity despite the early hour. Technical teams surrounded competitors, fine-tuning equipment for the challenging conditions. Coaches analyzed wind patterns on tablets, programmers adjusted scope software, and sports psychologists offered last-minute mental strategies. Jackson Pierce occupied the center of this storm, his large team working with coordinated efficiency around him. When he spotted Olivia, he excused himself and approached. His demeanor had shifted notably from the previous day, the dismissive confidence replaced by focused intensity. "Bennett," he acknowledged. "Impressive showing yesterday." "Thank you," Olivia replied. "You shot well yourself." Pierce studied her for a moment. 15 years at the top level, and I've never seen shooting like yours. It's unorthodox. My grandfather would have called it fundamental." "Your grandfather was William Bennett. I should have made the connection sooner." Pierce glanced at her rifle case. "He was before my time, but his name still comes up in certain circles. They say he could read wind patterns just by watching grass movements." Olivia nodded. "He could. And he taught you everything I know." Pierce's gaze intensified. The prelims were 300 yards in controlled conditions. Today is 400 yards with unpredictable winds. Tomorrow's final goes to 500 yards, potentially in rain. Technology exists for a reason, Bennett. It overcomes human limitations. Or creates new ones, Olivia countered quietly. Before Pierce could respond, the facility's director approached, accompanied by several officials and a television producer. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Pierce," the director greeted them. "Due to unprecedented interest, we've adjusted today's semi-final format. The championship group, that's you two, along with Ms. Thornton and Mr. Ramirez, will shoot last. We're also adding live interviews between relays." Pierce nodded his agreement immediately, ever comfortable in the spotlight. Olivia hesitated but ultimately concurred, recognizing that her grandfather's message deserved the wider audience. As the officials departed, Pierce turned back to Olivia. "The entire shooting world will be watching today. Your prelim performance was remarkable, but many still believe it was an anomaly. Semiconductor chips don't have off days. Traditional methods do." His words carried no malice, only the confident assessment of someone who had built his career on embracing technological advancement. As he returned to his team, Olivia reflected that he wasn't entirely wrong. Technology offered consistency that human senses alone couldn't match, in theory at least. The semi-final round began at 10 o'clock, with the first group of competitors facing challenging crosswinds that sent scores plummeting compared to the previous day. Even with advanced wind mapping systems and computerized scopes, shooters struggled to maintain consistent accuracy at 400 yards. From the preparation area, Olivia observed each group, noting how heavily they relied on their equipment and how frustrated they became when technology failed to completely solve the wind problem. She also noticed Rebecca Thornton, similarly, watching with intense concentration, occasionally making notes in a small book. When Rebecca noticed Olivia's gaze, she approached. "I spent all night reviewing videos of your shooting technique," she admitted without preamble. "It's not just your equipment that's different. Your entire approach defies current training methods. My grandfather believed that modern techniques overlooked fundamental relationships between shooter, rifle, and target." Rebecca nodded. "I heard you say that yesterday. I didn't understand it then. I'm not sure I do now, but..." She hesitated. "I tried simplifying my approach this morning, removed some variables, trusted my instincts more." "And?" A reluctant smile crossed Rebecca's face. "Best practice session I've had in years." Before Olivia could respond, the announcer called for the championship group to prepare. As Rebecca moved away, she paused. "Whatever happens today, Bennett, you've already changed things, for me at least." The championship group took their positions amid heightened anticipation. Camera operators adjusted their equipment while commentators provided background on each competitor. Jackson Pierce, introduced as the most decorated marksman of his generation, acknowledged the crowd with a practiced wave. When Olivia was announced as yesterday's perfect shooter, the audience's response was notably enthusiastic. The semi-final format consisted of 20 shots at 400 yards, with scores starting fresh. While yesterday's performance had secured Olivia's place in shooting history, today would determine whether she advanced to the final round. The wind had intensified, now gusting unpredictably across the range. Pierce's team conducted last-minute adjustments to his scope's wind compensation software. Thornton conferred with her coach, studying tablet readouts of wind patterns. Olivia simply stood quietly, feeling the air currents against her face, watching the subtle movements of the range-side vegetation, absorbing the environment as her grandfather had taught her. Championship group, you may begin when ready. The announcer called. The shooting proceeded in rotation, with each competitor firing one shot before the sequence repeated. This format maximized tension and allowed spectators to directly compare performance. Pierce fired first. 9-7. An excellent score given the conditions, but lower than his standard. Thornton. 9-5. The wind had caught her bullet despite her technical preparations. Ramirez. 9-4. The fourth member of the championship group was clearly struggling with the conditions. When Olivia's turn came, the facility fell into expectant silence. She settled into position, took a moment to feel the wind's rhythm, and fired. 10-0. A murmur rippled through the audience. One perfect shot could be luck. Consistency would tell the true story. As the rotation continued, a pattern emerged. Pierce maintained scores between 9-5 and 9-8, his technology providing significant but imperfect compensation for the changing winds. Thornton ranged between 9-3 and 9-9, occasionally finding the perfect alignment but struggling with consistency. Ramirez's scores gradually declined as frustration affected his performance. Olivia, meanwhile, maintained a string of perfect 10. Was seemingly unaffected by the very conditions that challenged her competitors. After 10 shots, the scoreboard displayed the widening gap. Pierce, 97. 2, Thornton, 96. 8, Ramirez, 95. 1, Bennett, 100. 0. The atmosphere in the facility had transformed from skeptical interest to astonished respect. Even the commentators struggled to explain how Olivia's traditional methods were outperforming state-of-the-art technology in precisely the conditions where modern equipment should have held the advantage. Pierce's composure began to show cracks. After his 12th shot registered 9-6, he engaged in an intense discussion with his coach, gesturing toward his rifle with obvious frustration. For a competitor accustomed to technological solutions, the inability to overcome Olivia's traditional approach clearly rankled. Thornton, conversely, appeared to be adapting. Her scores gradually improved as she incorporated elements of what she had observed in Olivia's technique, culminating in a perfect 10-0 on her 15th shot that drew enthusiastic applause. As the semi-final entered its final shots, the story was no longer about who would advance. Olivia, Pierce, and Thornton had secured their places in the final round. Instead, the audience watched to see if Olivia could maintain her perfect streak against increasingly difficult conditions. Shot 18, Pierce 9-7, Thornton 9-8, Olivia 10-0. Shot 19, Pierce 9-8, Thornton 9-9, Olivia 10-0. For the final shot of the semi-final, the wind reached its peak intensity. Flags at the end of the range snapped horizontally and loose papers blew across the facility. Pierce took extra time, conferring with his team, receiving updated calculations, adjusting his scope repeatedly before firing. 9-6. Thornton, watching Olivia more than her own equipment now, took a different approach. She simplified her process, trusted her instincts, and fired. 9. 9. When Olivia's turn came, she appeared to enter an almost meditative state. Her breathing slowed, her body aligned with the rifle with fluid grace, and she squeezed the trigger at a moment when most observers couldn't detect any pattern in the chaotic winds. 10-0. The scoreboard confirmed what many had considered impossible, another perfect round. 200 points out of 200, despite conditions that had humbled the most sophisticated equipment in the sport. The facility erupted in applause. Even competitors who had been eliminated stood to acknowledge the extraordinary achievement. The only person who didn't join the ovation was Jackson Pierce, who stared at the scoreboard with an expression that mingled disbelief with something approaching revelation. The post-semi-final interviews brought Olivia more attention than she had ever desired. Reporters pressed for explanations, technical details, training secrets. She answered with the same straightforward simplicity that characterized her shooting, consistently redirecting credit to her grandfather's teaching. William Bennett understood something fundamental about marksmanship that much of the shooting world has forgotten, she told one interviewer. Technology has its place, but it can't replace the intimate connection between shooter, rifle, and target. That connection is where true precision lives. As evening approached and the facility emptied, Olivia found herself alone on the range. Taking a moment of quiet before tomorrow's final round, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted her solitude, and she turned to find Jackson Pierce walking toward her without his entourage for the first time since the championship began. "I've been reviewing the footage of your shooting," he said without preamble. Frame by frame, shot by shot, Olivia waited, sensing there was more. 6 national championships, Pierce continued. 15 international medals. I've written books on advanced marksmanship techniques. I've helped design scope systems used by military units worldwide. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. And in all that time, I never once considered that technology might be creating distance rather than closing it. Distance? Olivia asked. Between the shooter and the shot. Pierce gazed out at the now empty range. All these years, I've been letting computers interpret the wind, calculate trajectories, adjust for variables, and somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling the shot. He turned back to her. That's what your grandfather meant, isn't it? The relationship isn't just technical. It's intuitive. Olivia nodded. He would say that marksmanship at its highest level is a conversation, not a calculation. You don't dominate the elements. You understand them, become part of them. For a moment, Pierce said nothing. Then he extended his hand. Thank you, he said simply. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've given something back to this sport, something valuable. The morning of the final round brought clear skies and moderate winds, conditions that favored neither technology nor traditional techniques disproportionately. As Olivia prepared in the now familiar routine, Thomas Mitchell approached with news. The Federation just announced record viewership for yesterday's coverage, he said. And Whitehawk's board has unanimously approved the heritage line we discussed. But there's something else, something bigger. He handed Olivia a tablet displaying an email from the Federation's executive committee. They're creating a new division for next season, traditional equipment class. Your performance has convinced them there's merit and public interest in showcasing marksmanship without technological enhancements. Olivia read the proposal, recognizing its significance not just for her, but for her grandfather's vision. He always said the sport had lost its way when it prioritized gadgets over fundamentals. This would have meant everything to him. It's your legacy now, Mitchell said, and it's just beginning. The final round featured only 8 competitors, the elite of the elite, shooting 20 shots at 500 yards, the ultimate test of precision, marksmanship, The facility had reached capacity, with spectators filling every available space and broadcast teams positioned for optimal coverage. As Olivia took her position, she noticed subtle changes in her competitors' approaches. Pierce had simplified his setup, removing several technological components. Thornton had adjusted her stance to more closely resemble Olivia's grounded alignment. Even competitors who still relied heavily on technology watched Olivia's preparation. With studied interest, the shooting proceeded with the same rotation format as the semi-final. The increased distance magnified every imperfection in technique, every miscalculation in wind reading, every lapse in concentration. Scores across the board were lower than previous rounds, with even Pierce struggling to maintain his usual consistency. Midway through the final, 3 distinct narratives had emerged. Pierce led the technology-focused competitors, his scores solid but unspectacular. Thornton represented a new hybrid approach, blending traditional techniques with selective technology. And Olivia continued her remarkable consistency, though the increased distance had finally resulted in her first non-perfect shot, a 9. 9 on her 8th attempt that actually drew sympathetic applause from the crowd. With 5 shots remaining, the scoreboard displayed a closer competition than previous rounds. Pierce, 148, 9. Thornton, 149, 2. Bennett, 149, 8. The entire facility held its collective breath as the final shots unfolded. Pierce finished strong, with 5 consecutive 9-9s, demonstrating the champion's mentality that had defined his career. Thornton matched him shot for shot, her new approach yielding her best performance of the championship. Olivia, feeling the weight of the moment, returned to her grandfather's most fundamental lesson. When the pressure is highest, simplify everything. Breathe, align, trust. Her final 5 shots were a masterclass in precision. 10, 0, 10, 0, 10, 0, 10, 0, 10, 0. As the final scoreboard displayed her victory, 199. 8 points out of a possible 200, the highest score in national championship history. Olivia felt a profound sense of completion. This wasn't just her victory, it was the vindication of her grandfather's philosophy, the fulfillment of his legacy. The medal ceremony featured a moment that would be replayed in shooting sports coverage for years to come. After receiving her gold medal, Olivia was joined on the podium by Rebecca Thornton, silver, and Jackson Pierce, bronze. As photographers captured the image, Pierce unexpectedly removed his customized shooting jacket, the one bearing the logos of technology companies and equipment manufacturers, and draped it over the railing. "Some traditions," he said, his voice carrying in the sudden quiet, "are worth rediscovering." 1 year later, Olivia Bennett stood at the entrance to the newly established William Bennett Marksmanship Academy on her Montana ranch. What had begun as a personal tribute to her grandfather had evolved into something more significant, a training center dedicated to teaching his fundamental approach to a new generation of shooters. The main building displayed a simple plaque: "The relationship between shooter, rifle, and target is where precision begins and mastery lives." Inside, students from across the country, some sponsored by the Federation's new development program, learned the techniques that William Bennett had once taught only to his granddaughter. Among the instructors was Rebecca Thornton, who had retired from competition to dedicate herself to preserving these traditional methods. Thomas Mitchell visited regularly, overseeing the phenomenally successful heritage line of rifles that bore William Bennett's name and philosophy. Even Jackson Pierce had contributed, writing a foreword to Olivia's book on traditional marksmanship that had become required reading in shooting programs nationwide. As Olivia watched new students arrive for the summer session, she reflected on how completely her life had transformed since that day at Ridgewood, when they had mocked her grandfather's rifle and her faded jacket. What had begun as a promise to honor his legacy had become a movement that was reshaping an entire sport. She touched the weathered rifle case that still held her grandfather's Remington, the instrument that had changed everything. Inside, she kept a small photograph. William Bennett teaching a young Olivia to shoot, both of them smiling beneath the Montana sky. They had laughed when she walked into that shooting range with her grandfather's weathered rifle. They weren't laughing anymore. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.